So I've played my first competition and it's time to find out how it went. Before we get into the video, guys, and you are new on this journey, I'm on a mission to try and win my first professional golf event, and today was round one. We're going to talk you through it and see how I get on. Remember to subscribe, it's totally free to do, it's down below. Let's find out how the comp went. So firstly, where was the competition? And it's not going to be a normal vlog style video, this one, where we're filming everyone, you're getting all the audio from it. Because it was a PGA competition, I had to be respectful of my playing partners, and also I didn't want to be sort of too involved in the video. I actually want to go to these competitions like everyone else who is playing in them and just focus on playing. So that means that we're not doing it in a style like we would do with record breakers or the 30-shot challenge or in the reds. It's me out there, we have the cameraman with us, and then we're trying to talk you through actually how the day has been. We've got every single shot and we'll go through the full round. But yeah, that's what we're trying to do, just give you an idea now of how the day went. Well, if you haven't watched the original video of me leading up and preparing to this actual competition, I had a few goals that I wanted to try and do. And one of them was to get there in time and prepare. Another one was to stick to my plan, and I had a very loose goal of shooting under 75. So we get to the actual course, we get to Bolton Golf Club, and like I said, one of my first things that I wanted to make sure that I do, because we don't do it a lot when we film the in the reds or the record breakers or generally any playing video that we have on the channel, because we're there not so much in a competition style format, we're just there to make content, and you know, we should do it realistically, but we don't. But my first goal was to actually get to the golf course and do some stretching, which I actually headed into the locker room and did about 5 to 10 minutes of stretching, and actually felt pretty decent after. It actually felt loose as well. A lot of the times when I get out on the first tee, I do feel stiff. I'm not a spring chicken anymore, and I need to loosen up. I then headed out to the nets and started to hit some golf balls, and then topped it off with a little bit of chipping and putting. Now, the greens themselves, because of how the course was, they were a little bit slow, and I'm glad I had a putt beforehand because of the amount of rain that had come down the night before, and also a little bit of work that they'd done the week before. They were just that little bit on the slow side. They were really good quality, and you can see from the images now that they look fantastic, but they were just a little bit slower than what I expected, so I was glad that that happened. Then it comes to the first tee. Now, as we get to the first tee, I think as I go through this series, I hope that I climatise more to professional competitions. The reason that the series came about was that I played open qualifying at Fulford, had a practice round, felt good, got on the first tee that day for the actual qualifying and was a bag of nerves, felt awful, maybe felt a little bit overwhelmed by the situation. And then as the day went on, I would say it took me maybe about 8 or 9 holes actually to settle into the round. But that's where my preparation comes in, and doing the things like the tour tier series that we've been doing, where I'm playing with other professionals at different levels and trying to get some advice from them, speaking to other coaches, other psychologists, other professionals in other areas of the game has really started to help. And I definitely saw this down on the first tee, because as I hit my first tee shot, I actually made a good swing. I just turned it over a little bit too much left, and it actually resulted in me having to hit a provisional golf ball. Now, it actually wasn't as bad as I thought, my first one. It had just caught the trees and dropped down to the right about 5 paces off the fairway. But what I was quite happy with was that even when I was over my provisional golf ball, I was still able to actually focus and not let the nerves come in too much. I think when I did this, I had the same thing happen at open qualifying, where I hit one out of bounds, and then on my second shot I was a little bit flustered and just sort of got on with it, as where I absolutely crushed it up the right hand side of the fairway. But as I said, my first one was okay. From there then I have a little wedge in, and because I've been doing a little bit of work with my wedge tart, I was able to hit a fairly decent one. The rough was a little bit stickier than I thought because of all the overnight rain, and It was an okay wedge, but left me around about 50 feet from my first putt. And like I said, I was glad that I did the original putting practice, because that helped me roll the one up nice and close and knock it in. So from there, first hole, I was actually quite pleased with it. Like I say, the first tee shot didn't go quite to plan, but I hit it pretty well. I just had a little bit too much turn with it, and I made the par. And what I also did well was that as I was watching the other pros tee off, the hole was only 285 yards. I saw a lot of them hitting driver, and I sort of questioned myself when I was stood near the first tee, well, should I hit driver? Because I drive it pretty well. But I'd planned to hit 2-iron. I'd done that in my practice round, and I stuck to that, which was, you know, quite a sort of pat on the back and a reassuring moment for me that I'd made par and had a good start there. So getting into the second hole, it's a dogleg right to left up the hill, a tee shot that doesn't really suit me, but again took the 2-iron and managed to place that down in the fairway with a nice little draw. A shot again that I had worked on in my practice round, which I wouldn't have known beforehand, so I was quite happy I did that. Rain starts coming down at this point as well, so the next shot was a pitching wedge, which I hit really nice and ended up hitting into about 12 foot. Now, again, greens, I was quite comfortable on them. I managed to roll this one down the hill for a nice little birdie to be 1 under after just 2 holes. Nice little wave to the crowd there as well of one person. Thanks for coming to watch. Now, the third hole, as we get into this one, this was one where I did actually change my strategy, because I wasn't too sure of what I should hit off this tee. I was questioning driver. I did hit it in the practice round and got a little bit too close to a tree that's up on the right hand side of the fairway. So I actually ended up going with 2-iron because I was hitting it well already. At that point, I'd hit 3 shots that were struck well and were going a decent distance. So I took that one a little bit pushy, but wasn't the end result, and what it left me with was just an 8-iron into the green, as you can see, quite sloping this fairway. And from there then managed to actually hit quite a decent shot in to round about 18 feet. Now this left me a little bit of an uphill putt, quite a slope, and I felt like I gave it a good run, but it just pulled up a little bit short here, leaving me about 1.5 foot for a tap in. So at this point, I'm quite happy. I'm starting to really settle down at this point, and what I hope happens as the competitions go on and I play in more and more is that I do become accustomed to it. I do get a grip of my nerves, because I'm expecting to be nervous in them because I care what I'm doing, but I did feel a lot better from what I did do at Open qualifying. Now, we could argue that that is probably the scale of events. There was 150 people trying to qualify for the next round of the Open Championship at the Open qualifying, as we're here. I think there was only 20 players in the field, and the course difficulty wasn't as difficult as what I saw as Fulford. It also wasn't my first comp back, but what I will say, after 3 holes, having that par birdie par start and just sort of easing my way into the round, nothing spectacular, just quite ploddy in a sense, just knocking a 2-iron down, hitting it up to the green, I felt quite comfortable. When we get onto the 4th tee, it was 165 yards, a par 3 with a fairly narrowish green. The flag, I think, was 168 on this one. I hit 8-iron with a tiny little cut and ended up pitching it to about 30 feet. It stuck there, and again, I've got myself another birdie chance, and I'm getting quite comfortable with the pace of the greens now. Just left this one about 6 inches short, right in the jaws. So at this moment in time, I'm pretty happy with how everything is going. When we get onto the 5th hole, and this is where it was sort of starting to maybe dawn on me, I did go a little bit into score mode. I was thinking, oh, you're 1 under par after 4, that's a good. Well, let's do that again for the next 4, as opposed to those first 4 holes. I'd thought solely about, okay, what's this shot? What do I need to hit here? And it was a tee shot that I was a little bit nervous when I was preparing for the round. It's a par 4 that is 415 yards. It's not overly long, but it's sort of dog legs left to right, but there is out of bounds down the right. And a shot that I sort of am fighting a little bit at the moment is one that leaks a little bit right, sort of a push cut. But I managed to stick to my guns here. I knew I was going to hit driver. I picked a target in the distance, and even though the rain was starting to really come down at this point, I committed to it and I hit a good shot that just pitched in the fairway and just trickled into the semi. Now, this is the first real mental error that I had during this round. We had the opportunity to lift clean and place during this round just because of how much rain was coming down. There was a few damp areas throughout the golf course, so we played lift clean and place throughout the course. And I've got to the golf ball, I have taken my practice swings, I've stood over the golf ball. I actually had a little bit of an internal conversation with myself as I was stood over the golf ball about not lift cleaning and placing, and oh, you actually feel like you stood a little bit too close, but I just carried on and hit it, and it resulted in my first sort of real bad shot of the day, as it were. A little bit heely, a little bit low. It did pitch up on the green, but then it ran off to the right hand side, and what you can't see from the chip here is where the ball is laid. It's up against a thick collar of grass, so it made the chip quite difficult. So to get a real good solid contact, I really had to commit to this, and I did. I picked my spot. I just didn't quite get a full connection on it, and it left me about that 6 foot putt there. So I had 6 to 8 feet there, and just a poor stroke more than anything. I think the reason that I made bogey there was more to do with the fact of not the chip, but more to the iron shot, because of that poor mentality, not backing off, getting a clear mindset and being very deliberate like I had been over my other previous holes about what I was about to do, instead of having the internal monologue. So it's a bogey. At that point I felt, do you know what, it's okay, it's tough, it's raining quite a bit, I'm level par after 5. If you would have offered me that when we started, I probably would have snapped your hand off. So we moved on to the 6th hole. Now, before we get into the 6th hole, what I will say, at this point of the round, I felt really comfortable. Even though I'd made bogey, normally that would be a place where my mind would start to really scramble, thinking, oh, what have you done, what have you done? And it would probably alter a lot of the holes. But actually, when I got onto the tee, it's a hole that you can drive, I felt actually quite confident. I felt, well, you know what? You know what you did wrong. Let's just make sure you don't do that again. Just get that in check. One of the things that I talked about of my expectation and my goals was to be committed throughout the round and prepare well. And I felt that I'd done that. I felt that I was hitting it well. So I just had to sort of trust in the process. Now this hole, 328 yards, like I say, a par 4 that I felt was drivable because it doesn't play 328 yards, it plays closer to 300, and if you get a good one away, it was a little bit downwind and off the right, so it was pushing it towards the front of the green. The shot that I hit was just completely out of character. It was like 70 yards offline. It felt like it came off at the right angle, and I don't want to be that guy that says, oh, it wasn't me, but I did notice that when I sort of looked at the golf club afterwards, there was a lot of water on the face, but it was a little bit of me, and I felt like the ball just sort of slipped off because I generally don't hit it that wide. Luckily for me though, there was a couple of fairways that way and it wasn't the end of the world. Now, as I hit this next wedge in, again, if we looked at sort of what a professional would do, I got what I thought was the yardage. I had a little bit of a guesstimate. I had my distance to the middle, and I thought, yeah, that'll do. I wasn't thorough in like I had been with all my other shots bar the previous iron. I picked a wedge, I had 128. I hit it really good, and I actually hit it straight over the stick. And what unfortunately happened was it pitched on the fringe and just trickled over the back of the green. Now this left me with a tricky little up and down pitching on, which I felt not great over. The lie wasn't fantastic where it was. I just didn't hit a good chip, all being said, and then hit a pretty poor putt that just didn't really get going off the face as we went through that one. So it was another bogey, and again, at this point, this would be where I start to really spiral in the past, thinking, oh no, what have you done? What's going on? You've made a bogey, you followed it up with another bogey. Oh my God, you're going to shoot 90. What is going on? But we get onto the 7th hole, which was a tricky little hole, dogleg from right to left. In the practice round, I actually lost a ball down here because it was one of the holes that I thought I could hit a 4-iron down to the corner and go on, as where 4-iron was too much. So I actually ended up hitting 6-iron here, hit a really nice shot, probably the best strike I've made of the day. It's gone straight where I'm aiming. I felt like my confidence was back and we were on a good roll. Wedge here, again, the rain is starting to really pour at this time and I'm thinking it's really good. The pin was a little bit tucked on the right hand side and it's actually ended up pitching just on the fringe and trickled through the back, and I've left myself a little bit short-sided. For some reason I felt a little bit nervy over the chip again, maybe because I've not got up and down over the last two. I let that get to me a little bit and I ended up just hitting a poor shot, and again it was one that I wasn't really committed to what I was doing. I sort of stood over it thinking maybe open the face a little bit more, well no, maybe run it, and I didn't have that clear picture. So it's something there that I think that pre-shot routine and being definitive in what I'm about to do and being committed to the wrong shot is probably it will be better than being uncommitted to the right shot. So we have about 8 foot, a pretty good putt, but it just swings hard right across the hole and I end up making a bogey. So at this point now, we've gone from a really good start to actually feeling there that I've not really hit many bad golf shots. I would say I felt like I hit one bad golf shot in that poor strike. It felt a little bit heely, shanky almost. As well, the others I thought, well, they were just sloppy mistakes. So as we get onto the 8th tee here, this is where it would potentially really spiral out of control. Now you can see the weather wasn't looking its best, and I think that may have helped me in a way here because I've just come off the back of 3 bogeys there. An old me would have lost my mind a little bit. I would have probably thrown the towel in, used the weather as an excuse and just not performed to my best and let the round get away from me, thinking, oh God, what am I going to do? What am I going to shoot? You're going to shoot 90 and all these wild thoughts coming in. But I think because of everything that we've been doing leading up to this preparation, and even though I'd made those 3 bogeys, I think it was down to the chipping more than anything. I actually felt like I was still hitting it pretty decent given that it was still raining quite hard and the circumstances we were in. So on this tee shot on 8, I stood up here. As you can see, the rain's still coming down heavy and I managed to hit a really nice drive down here. Committed to this one. Obviously the last drive I've hit has gone off the planet right and there was an out of bounds down right here if you go as far as I did on the other one, but it left me in a good spot, 97 yards to the flag, and because I've been practicing with my wedges more, I felt confident and I managed to stuff this one in close to 3 foot and then follow that up with a nice putt again with the rain tumbling down upon us. So I felt like that was a really good sort of anchor for me because I've had those 3 bogeys. I've then gone on to make the birdie. I still thought at this point, and I would say one thing that I need to be a little bit more aware of, and I think it would be really hard to do this and be interesting to know how many of the pros do this, but I sort of started to count score here a little bit. I was, okay, well, that's a birdie. That eradicates one of the bogeys. I've already had 1 birdie, so I'm only 1 over now. That's okay, let's keep going. And as we get on to the 9th tee, you can see the rain really coming down here, and actually as we're hitting our second shots here, we hadn't checked our phones, but the comp had actually been suspended, or was just being suspended at this time, due to the fact that the green on 9 and the green on 8 and 7 was actually starting to flood. As you can see, like I say, it was quite a lot of rain. So it sort of put a bit of a dip in momentum, but in a way I was slightly happy with that. And what I was quite proud of was that as we walked off the course here, we were at the furthest point and we had to walk down like quite a large hill, like quite a way away from the from the clubhouse, all the way back down there. We waited for about 25 minutes or so to let the rain pass, and then the greenkeepers had been out and squeegeed the greens. We then wandered back up to where we were. Our balls had been marked, and as you can see from the shot that I'm about to play, I was in some deep rough, and I thought to myself, okay, you're probably going to make bogey here. This would be a really big turn of events if you were to up and down this, because it was such a horrible lie. But what I was quite happy with was that we'd come away from the course and we'd come back out, and like I say, old me, having maybe looked at how the day was going, there was still a lot of rain planned. I'd just, you know, yes, I'd made birdie, but I'd just had 3 bogeys on the spin. I would have maybe in the past said, do you know what, should we just get off and just say that the comp was suspended and it was raining and, you know, we had to go because we had other things to do. But I managed to regroup. I got back to this shot. Rain stopped a little bit, it was only light rain, and I managed to hit quite a nice wedge out of what was a difficult situation. So again, happy with how sort of my mentality was here. It left me with a 12-foot putt, and just a poor putt on my part, just pushed it a little bit, but tapped it in, and I start off with a bogey again. But like I say, because I was swinging it quite well, I felt confident in what I was doing. I thought to myself, well, there we go, 9 holes, you're 2 over par. You've actually hit the golf ball pretty well. If you would have said to me that you would have hit it this well at the start of the event, I would take that. It was just those sloppy mistakes and the poor chips that I needed to rectify on the next 9. So we get on to 10, which is a par 3 down the hill. I selected a pitching wedge, told myself, come on, new 9, let's keep going, let's keep confident, and I hit a really good shot in here. It was 153 yards down the hill, and I managed to hit it into 9 feet. Now, because the greens were a little bit slower, they just weren't taking as much break because of how much rain was on them, so I ended up just lipping out on this one. But this is the area, like I say, where normally I would be expecting to hole a few more of these putts. We're 10 holes in now, and I've only held 1 putt from outside of 6 feet, which was that one on the second. I would maybe be expecting to hole 1 or 2, 3 maybe more around at this point as we're going through, but you never know, that may change as we go on. So we stand up on 12, a par 4, and really happy what I did here. Selected my driver, I knew I had to hit driver up the right hand side, committed to it and hit a really nice shot here, which left me about, I think it was 154 yards to the flag. I selected a 9-iron, it was slightly downhill, but absolutely crushed this golf ball. It ended up flying about 165 yards and left me about 20 foot back down the green, which I thought, you know, that was pretty good because I didn't expect to hit my 9-iron that far, but just a woeful putt. Managed to keep my cool and tidy this one up here. Like I say, a little bit of a tap in, and you can probably see there the putts that I'm hitting, they aren't really going in with pace. So as where normally those sort of ones I would hit in with a little bit more conviction. But as we get on to 12, a tough tee shot, again a par 4 that is about 400 yards long, a narrow gap that you have to drive it through, and what I was really happy with was that I was committed to the shot and managed to hit a really solid drive here, just drawing down the middle and just trickling into the semi-rough. Now, one thing that I did find throughout this, when I was having wedges and I think more so with my chips as well, I was scared of going beyond the hole. It was almost as if like 1 foot beyond it was really bad, as where 1 foot short was absolutely fine. And this shot here, I have 108 yards to the flag. I've got my 50 out, and I sort of said in my mind, well, you can't hit it 109, and just quit on it and just didn't quite get it. It was a little bit wet underneath and maybe caught it a little bit heavy, but it was again one that I wasn't aggressive with, which we see follow on into the chip, and I just wasn't quite sort of, like I say, you know, firing at the flags and thinking to myself, well, there is room beyond it. 3 foot beyond isn't any worse than 3 foot short, and you know, if it goes beyond it, at least it's got a chance to go in if it is going past it. But I was just a little bit tentative with those chips, but luckily managed to get this one up and down, and a little bit bittersweet having only 108. Because I was hitting it quite well, I would have hoped I would have hit a better wedge shot and given myself a birdie chance. But again, moved on nicely here to the next hole, hit a 5-iron down, which leaves me in a point where again I've got another wedge in hand. The same complex came in here, me not wanting to go beyond the flag. I did hit a decent one, I had 102 yards and I've hit a full 54, but again you can see even by the follow through that I didn't quite commit to it, and it ended up pitching in at about 10 feet and then zipping back to about 20 feet because of the spin and the softness of the greens. Putt, as to be expected, just never really got it there today, but left me a pretty safe par. And everything that I was doing up to this point, I was sort of saying, okay, well, we're ticking along here, you know, we've parred 10, we've parred 11, we've parred 12, 13, we get on to 14, keep doing what you're doing. It's 153 yards, picked my 9-iron, had my target in my mind, and I think definitely when there's big pines like that and a real focal point for me to aim at, that really switches me on. It's something that I need to lock into a little bit more, because again, I hit a nice shot in here to about 18 feet and actually gave this one a little bit of a go, just slides by, but I was quite happy that, you know, it was a putt that I actually got to the hole and had given a chance to go in this time instead of being that little bit tentative. Now, as we get onto the 15th hole, 481 yards, it's a par 5 and I hit a pretty decent drive, just pulled it ever so slightly, but the good thing is left is the play here. If you're right, there is a ditch that runs all along there. Left is always going to kick back, which it did. It kicked back just to nearly on the fairway, and I was in a little bit of semi-rough. Now, as I've hit this shot, annoyingly, I only had 183 yards, so I had a 7-iron in my hand. The wind was slightly into me. I thought, well, if it comes up a slight bit short, that's not bad because it's got the chance of bouncing on down. But as I hit it, I absolutely flushed it, and I've caught a little bit of a flyer, and unfortunately, it's gone all the way to the back of the green, literally carried over the back, and at one point I was thinking it was going out of bounds, and it found a real scrappy lie behind the green. It was sort of all lush, rough, overgrown, and you know, not the place you wanted to be. And this was sort of the one where it got to me a little bit, didn't hit a great chip. I end up getting a little bit annoyed with myself and sort of feeling a little bit hard done by. And what I am happy about is that, yes, the first putt wasn't what I needed to do, just a little bit weak. It catches the slope and I leave myself about 3 or 4 feet to tidy up here, but I managed to hold that one. I did walk off feeling a little bit hard done by, but what I didn't let it do was derail me. On 16, again, committed to my shot, and I just pulled it ever so slightly and ended up just pitching by the trees and bouncing into the trees and being in the long rough under there. Now, what was good, and again, and like I said, I think doing everything that we've done with the tour series and playing with Pete and playing with another professional that you'll see very soon on the channel, I know that it's not crazy scoring to actually win one of these things. And as I found myself under the tree, all I said to myself was, okay, well, you're 2 under par. Let's not go and ruin this by trying to hit a hero shot. Let's just try and get up to the front of the green. You can chip the ball well. If you can get it up close, it looks like a pretty simple up and down, because pins back left, you can run something up the green. So let's just stay committed. Obviously what happened on the last hole, I didn't let that affect me, thinking, oh, well, I've been hard done by in here, now I can't hit the green, and it was a pretty good drive, just a little pull. I managed to just stick to my game plan and stay committed about trying to just get it up and down. And luckily, I did what I intended there, took a 9-iron out of the rough from 145, had to keep it low, get it up to the front. Then I used the pitching wedge just to get the ball running at the hole a little bit more. The others I've been using 58 and wasn't confident. Not quite the chip that I wanted to hit. Again, just couldn't quite get it up to the hole. It was really the story of the day. But for me, like I say, putting always a stronger point, and I literally managed to just creep this one in on its very last roll, and it sort of felt like a bit of a moment, because we've made par. It was a scrappy par. I've battled for it, but I stuck to my guns and thought it out well. 17 was the only time where I've really changed what I wanted to do. In the practice round, I hit a 2-iron because it looks on the map that the fairway falls away and you couldn't hit it past about 240, but actually once I played the hole, I knew that as long as you were pretty straight, there wasn't really much trouble, and as long as you got by some trees down on the right hand side, about 260, you leave yourself, you're flicking with a wedge. It might be a little bit of an uneven lie, but I was thinking to myself at this point, okay, you're 2 over. If you can maybe pick one up here and maybe pick one up on the next, you could actually stand a good chance of maybe winning this thing, because how rainy it's been. You know, it's been a tough day out there. Yes, it was a bit like darts throwing it into the soft greens, but still, with how much rain had come down, it was pretty hard. So I selected driver here, hit a pretty good shot here, maybe a little bit reactive to the last tee shot, a tiny little push, but the good thing was I knew I only had to get past 260 of the trees, which I did. hit it about 285, which then leads me to having only 63 yards to the flag. Again, that weird thought of like, I can't go beyond this, you can't go beyond it, was in my mind. And then also, well, don't leave it short because there's a bunker staring your face. And I just didn't commit. It was a shot that, on my other shots that I've been hitting, especially my tee shots, I was really clear like, well, you're going to fade it off this tree or you're going to land it here. On that one, it was more like, well, don't do this. And ultimately, I duffed it. The chip here, I was thinking, right, well, let's just try and chip it in. And I was a little bit more aggressive, which I was quite happy about because I gave it a good run hit at this point and left myself about 4 feet to tidy up. Normally my bread and butter, but a little bit of a pushy stroke, and we end off walking off with a bogey, which felt a little bit disappointing because I was chasing to try and get back to that level par or 1 over. You've put yourself in a good position to do it with that tee shot. Indecision instead of like a poor executed shot, just not being clear in the mind, led to me making that bogey. On 18 though, I thought, well, come on, you know, 3 over par at this point. Don't do anything daft. You can't hit driver because you run out of space at about 250. So I hit a 2-iron, really nice down the centre, left it right at the end of the fairway. And this is again where mentality comes to it. I actually, at the end of this shot, I turned to my cameraman and I'm saying, I actually told myself to back off this shot because as I was stood over it, I was saying to myself, are you going to hit it with a bit more of a low flighted punch, or should you hit it a bit higher and try and hit it full and get it all the way there? And I hadn't picked the shot I wanted to hit. And I was actually saying in my mind, right, back off it because you're not certain of what you're doing. But then I actually said, oh, well, just sod it, just hit it. It doesn't matter. Ultimately hit a really poor shot because I'm not switched on to what I'm doing, but I leave myself a pretty simple chip, pin high, nothing in the way, just some rough I've got to get it over. And story of the day, lo and behold, leave it short, landed it about 6 foot short of where I wanted to. I leave myself a 15 footer, read it nice, and then we just get a tiny lip out to finish the day. So a really sort of sour finish to the round there with those bogeys down 17 and 18. But as I walked off the course, I was actually quite happy with what I'd done. If we remember back earlier in the video, I had some goals that I wanted to try and achieve in this first competition. Score-wise, I wanted to break 75. I did that with a 74. I wanted to try and give myself the adequate preparation and give myself the opportunity to give a good reflection of how and what my golf is at, what standard it's at the moment. And I think I did that with my stretching, my warming up, my practice round, going through my strategy and actually going in there with a plan and actually executing it for the most part. And then, you know, actually just the chipping really let me down. And it was a weird sort of pot of emotions that I was going through because I felt happy in that I hadn't, you know, shot a wild number, you know, into the 80s and thought, oh my God, what are you actually doing? You'll never actually win a tournament. I wasn't too far away. There was just a few sloppy mistakes. But then I was actually just, as I drove home from the competition and as I did the shots on my shot scope app, it was just how soft the bogeys were. I didn't make any real massive mistakes, and definitely what we saw from the Tour Tier series with Pete Finch, him talking about you not having to be the longest player, you just have to be consistent and tidy. That resonated. You know, I didn't need it to hit the driver 350 really at any point. I just plodded it round. I hit, I think, 5 or 6 irons off tees, some good drives that stood me in good stead, and I wedged it well. It was just sloppy bogeys and real basic chips. So as a whole, I think is a good start. You know, we were in with a chance, as you can see from the leaderboard that will pop up here now. I wasn't that far actually away from the leader. He shot 2 under, which, you know, great score on the day given how bad the conditions were. I was only 6 shots back from that, and I dropped 5 of them with really, really sloppy errors. So not a million miles away. There's still some work to be done, but if we can do that, I think we're on the right trajectory. And as we go through the Tour Tier series, I think we're going to get some really valuable information from other pros that I think is going to help me elevate my game and hopefully give you guys watching at home some good ideas in how to improve your game as well. Guys, if you have enjoyed this video and you're ready for the next one, we are entered into another competition later on in September. So make sure, like I said earlier, you hit that subscribe button, leave us a like if you've enjoyed this style of video, and also leave us a comment as well about that. And we'll see you in my next competition very soon.